Albany,
Here.
Barnet,
Here.
Bloomfield,
Here.
Brighton, Brownington, Brunswick,
Here.
Cabot, Charleston, Concord, Corinth, Danville,
Here.
Derby,
Here.
East Haven,
Here.
Glover, Granby, Greensboro,
Here.
Groton, Guildhall, Holland, Irisburg, Jay,
Here.
Kirby, Lunenburg, Linden, Maidstone,
Here.
Marshfield, Morgan, Newark, Newberry, Newport Town,
Here.
Norton,
Here.
Peacham, Reigate, Sheffield,
Yeah.
Stannard,
Here.
Sutton, Topsom, Troy,
Here.
UTG.
Here.
Was that Gina?
Yes.
Gina, according to my list, Barb Nolan is now the supervisor. I don't know if you still represent them or not.
She did not tell me otherwise, so I don't know. Just keep me for Norton then.
Okay. Victory, Waterford, Westfield, Westmore, Miriam,
Here.
Wheelock.
Yes.
Okay. $23. You have 23, Shannon? Yep. Okay, Nick. We are good. Can everybody hear? On the computer, can you hear, folks?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. Yes.
Okay. Speak up if if there's something you need us to repeat.
We'll call it Tuesday, October
Okay.
4. Down to Article 3.
If Nick is talking, we can't hear him.
Okay. He's gonna move closer. Yeah, he actually chose the chair farthest away, so. He is now.
I got a loud one. Is that better?
Much better.
Perfect. Oh, we called the meeting to order.
Yes.
And Article 3 is the first one that we're going to get to. Any updates to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes of the September 10th, 2024 meeting.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes of September 10th as printed.
I second.
No, okay.
It's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Corrections? Nothing? Perfect. All those in favor of the approval of the minutes of the September 10th, 2024 meeting signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Nay. Ayes have it. Thank you. Article 5 is the truck lease.
I haven't gotten quite as far along as I would have liked to with the truck lease. I do have a proposal from one vendor. Ken Johnston from Greensboro gave me information from another local organization that also leases trucks. And we weren't able to connect until Thursday of this coming week. So I need to try and get at least one more proposal. And then we'll go ahead with that. I believe the authorization to lease was granted at the last meeting, and we'll just do that. So there's really nothing to vote on at this point.
Okay.
So I'm just moving forward with that process and hopefully be able to report that we have a vehicle leased for the November meeting.
Mhm.
Any questions on that?
All right. I'll jump into Article 6 then. That's the 2020 Mack truck, the final payment from the Capital Improvement Fund. $15,694.33. There's a second?
May I ask a
Uh,
question?
yeah, hold on. It's been made,
Wow.
made and seconded. Now we can go into discussion. Did you have something, Paulette?
Yes, why do we need to vote on this? We have to pay it.
It's because it comes out of the capital improvement fund, and all expenditures that come out of the capital fund are subject to the board approval.
Okay, thank you. Yep,
Just a formality.
okay.
Any other questions? So we have a motion to approve the final payment from the Capital Improvement Fund for $13,694.33. All
I
those,
make that motion.
all those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
If there's any opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Thank you. 694.33.
And that dollar amount is as of October 15th. So, I'll mention this to Michelle tomorrow, and we can make the payment this week. It'll be a few dollars less because of avoided interest if we pay it, on the 9th or the 10th. It won't exceed that.
And Article 7.
Free word game. No annoying ads. No Wi-Fi needed.
2025 draft budget discussion. Hopefully everybody has time to.
Yeah, and I just want everybody to know, the budget was generated. There was an executive committee meeting or work session to draft the budget. And because of the way we now approve the budget, we have a little less pressure, or the board has a little less pressure to pass it this evening. So we don't have to feel like we have to get through this budget tonight. I think this would be a great opportunity, though, to start the discussion and answer any questions that folks might have. I did try and explain it a little bit in the notes why the budget is up and some of the justification for that. But I would certainly entertain additional questions right now. And we actually have until December 15th to pass the budget and forward it to the towns. So if the board wishes to not take action tonight, they could do that in November. They could do it in December as well. But we do have a couple of public hearings that we typically hold. So ideally, I would like to get resolution on the budget, pass it in November, hold the public meetings, and if there are no comments received, then the budget would stay as approved by the board, and we would send it to the towns for inclusion into their annual reports and their budgets for 2025 by the middle of December.
Well, I'd like to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah.
What we try to do is not surcharge. Remember, after
We can't hear anybody.
No, it doesn't get any sound.
South in this direction. I'm running out of quarter.
So what we did is the executive board decided not to increase the per capita charge per town, keep it at its current rate due to the per capita was originally.
Oh, dear.
Fran, can you hear him?
No, just barely.
No, I can't hear either Westmore.
Right next to
And I apologize. The computer setup's a little different than normal.
Sorry to blast you.
And
You're good.
we're using my my son's 10-year-old
30-year-old
laptop. Yeah.
I know about that.
So Walter is now right next to the computer, and he'll
Okay.
start his comments over.
So, being part of the executive board, going over the budget, the executive board decided not to increase the per capita per town and to keep it the same. The reasoning being that the per capita was established several years ago because we needed to pay for the bailout. And we thought that it would not be right to increase it. Also psychologically for the towns, it's a good thing because they won't see that rate go up. We did increase the rates for hauling food scrap,
No, not food scraps, just hauling.
The haul charge.
the hauling charge for the transfer station and the schools,
Yes.
that's what I meant. We increased the surcharge substantially. And that is one of the things that I know some towns might want to talk about. So I'm going to leave it there.
Yeah, and I would just add to that as Walter mentioned, the per capita assessment was originally established when we had the Baylor failure, but a couple years ago, we decided to dedicate that to health insurance, and we reestablished
Right. Yeah, remember that. Yeah.
a year or so ago.
Mhm.
And so, we're trying to stick to that and use that money only for health insurance costs, which have gone up dramatically from 2024 to 2025. But because we began collecting that in 2023, we still have money left over to absorb some of the additional costs.
I
I
see.
feel confident that we'll have enough money for health insurance in 2025 at the current rate, but that rate may have to go up in 2026, depending on what happens to the health insurance costs.
Did anybody on the Zoom part have any direct questions to any of the line items on the proposed budget?
That was good. You did very well. Thank you.
And just to clarify too, the surcharge for 2024 is $26.75 per ton. The proposed rate for 2025 is $29.50, a $2.75 increase, which represents about an 11% increase. One of the reasons I'm not too keen on approving the budget right now is we're still getting surcharge payments in. And because we usually balance the budget with surcharge revenues after we look at the revenues for everything else, if our tonnage that we surcharge increases, we don't have to raise the surcharge as much. So I'm still looking at those numbers, and maybe hopefully I can lower that a little bit, but I think for discussion purposes, the $29.50 rate would be a ceiling and not a floor at this point. It could go down, but right now the budget is balanced at that figure.
Okay.
You want to pick?
All the reasons to increase the budget, as Paul mentioned in his note. However, I looked at the 8.8%. I know my particular government body is having other problems. They don't want to have anything right now extra on them. That's the problem to them. And I know the school budget throughout the state, huge problem getting through. Everybody supports the school. We'll fight if anything above about 4 or 5%. And here we are saying we need over 8%. I don't know how to deal with the budget well. I would where would we cut? Don't want to cut the things that Paul has mentioned he needs here, especially that new worker.
Well, and if
I'd like some suggestions. 16 a bit more. I will vote for it without them saying something that way.
Because most of this is borne on the surcharge, towns don't necessarily pay that directly. So for instance, in the town of Greensboro, your town is not paying the surcharge directly to the district because you don't have, well, you have trash at your facility, but the hauler takes care of it. So the burden for most of this increase is on the trash generation, not taxes. And that's an important distinction. Where the town will see an increase is the proposed increase in the hauling fee from $49 a trip to, I think it was 55. And the school would go from 33 to 37. Those aren't huge increases, and it's still a vastly subsidized rate to send a truck and 2 people to a town to pick up their materials. So, I mean, you can do the math. At $6 additional per trip over 52 weeks, you're looking, a little over $300. Now that's unique to the town of Greensboro. Other towns, and I'll use Wheelock as an example because they do pay the surcharge because they have a facility. You know, if they generate 300 tons of trash a year and it goes up by just under $3 a ton, they're looking at an additional $900. So that kind of puts it in perspective. You know, the surcharge, we take in about 20,000 tons a year. So for each dollar we increase it, it raises about $20,000. This year, I think we're going to take in more than 20,000, but some of that's related to the flood. And I don't necessarily want to bank on having massive flooding every year, although the last 2 years, you know, we have seen increases in tonnage due to multiple flooding.
If I understand your comments there, I know that select board will be brought up. So you're increasing the charge of all the people who don't even use these services, who just have some facility at home and collect it. They're having to pay this increase. But the people actually come to the town's recycling center are not going to pay as much. And that will cause some things. So they'll still say, why do you have to go up 9%? Why can't you cut that down like the schools have had to cut down, even though they didn't want to? And that's a question that will come to me. And I don't know how to answer that question. No, they are hiring some company to come to their house, pick up the trash, and so they are paying their full increased dumping charge. Yeah, right.
And that's why it's gonna be individual taxpayer base. So we had this discussion because I work for all of it, right? So everybody's gonna pay eventually. But the difference between our budget and the school budget is the school budget is about 18% fluff that can get cut on a whim and not even be recognized. They artificially, I was on the school board, they artificially inflate that number so they can cut down if they have to. We're running bare bones now, so like, that's like taking meat off the bone that's not there. But at a certain point, it's like, you know, how much more can we cut? I mean, I didn't want to see the surcharge go up as much as it did. But in some cases, we really don't have much of a choice. I mean, the cost of everything just in the last 2 years is more than triple. So on average, it costs every home of family of four $1,000 a month more now than it did 2 years ago. So that's the same as any business. Anything that we do is costing more. So to be able to balance it like we did, I feel like it was, it's not the perfect scenario, but it's the best scenario that we could come up with without shutting certain things down. We have to have another employee to be able to operate the way that we do.
Well, and you know, we kind of have a couple things converging here. We're going to change the way we own trucks,
Right.
going from ownership to leasing.
So we fix
It's going to save money compared to this year, but it is going to cost a little bit more than what we had budgeted for. And that's an important distinction because we overspent by about $50,000 in our truck maintenance line item this year. So that'll go down, but it'll still be higher than previous years. The other issue is we're going to have to spend money to look for a new executive director. I don't know how much money that's going to take. I put in $8,000 for that as a placeholder. We may find that we have to pay my replacement more money. I don't know because we're not far enough along in that process.
And there might be a time period where we're paying both to be here because Paul's going to have to transition somebody into that job. Yeah.
I thought the LCT was assisting us with that
Well,
search.
they are, but it's not free.
I see.
Yeah.
Is that with passive insurance or something like that? Your insurance with VLCT?
Well, yeah, they are our insurance provider, but they also provide other services.
Yeah.
I was under the impression that they actually got heavily involved in recruitment. What they do is they have guidance for developing things like position descriptions and things like that. But they don't actually get involved in the recruiting. They do have some consultants that they can recommend that would help with that process. And that's where I think we would have to spend the money.
I see.
I'm still trying to meet with someone at the league to discuss those details, and hopefully I can report back at the November meeting on that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Steve.
Number 13. This year you have 2,000, but next year you have 10,000.
That's where I put the money for the
The 8,000 for the.
looking for the new position. I just didn't know where else to put it, so I put it under legal fees. No, and I could put a separate line item. It's just that was where I put it. Just so you know, I don't anticipate legal fees of $10,000, but that would be where the executive director expense for the search would be incurred. If you want, I'll just add another line.
Number 27. Do you know how many people are going to take advantage of the chart?
Michelle and I are working on that, and hopefully in the next week or two we will. Right now, I've estimated, I think, 7 out of 10. Right now, I think we only have 5, but I do know that some people will be wanting the insurance going into next year.
This would also include, hiring a new person. And figuring that they might want to.
Correct. They might also want the insurance. And the way the insurance is set up is that we offer 3 plans, bronze, silver, and gold, and that the district would fund the premium at the bronze level. If you want silver or gold, or if you want a 2-person plan or a family plan, you pay the difference between the single-person bronze plan and whatever the higher plan or the larger number of people would be.
Anybody on Zoom have any direct questions for the budget? Bill?
Oh, okay. That's a good question. So, line item 38 says box truck insurance. We incurred $12,400. That was for a claim. So again, that's probably not worded the way it should be, but we don't anticipate insurance claims that we have to pay out and get reimbursed for. So that was just a placeholder to show that in 2024, we did incur that expense, but we also got that money back. Yeah.
Number 46. The total amount for truck repairs.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Could you guys repeat their questions?
Oh, sure,
Because
yeah.
we're just getting the answers and not knowing what they're asking.
That one was line.
Thanks, Paulette.
That was line 46, Paulette, truck repair. He
Right.
was asking why the budget doesn't, it's just blank.
I think it's different than. So we talked about this with the executive committee, and the truck lease line item actually includes the money for truck repair right now. So I need to split that out and make it, to make it more accurate. We agreed that we needed to have 2 line items, but what didn't happen was we didn't separate the lease from the repairs.
47 for one truck.
2 trucks. Correct. And so, we just authorized the payment, final payment for the Mac. The leases have mileage rates, and it's interesting because we pay 9 cents a mile, according to the one proposal I've received, up to 30,000. For anything over that, we pay an additional 10 cents a mile, so it'd be 19 cents a mile. So what we'll use the MAC for is to make sure we stay under the 30,000. And my guess is we would probably use the MAC a little more than that, because anything we can keep off the leased vehicles, and we'll want to keep the MAC running just so it doesn't sit for long periods of time. So we'll be able to kind of work that into the rotation. Right now, I'd say virtually none. Yeah, that's relatively new. It did break down in Barnet on Friday. We had it towed. Luckily, it was just the batteries. So I don't anticipate that that'll be that much. But as the truck ages, we probably will get into higher repair costs, but I don't think we're quite there yet with the. So the question was, what's the market value for the Mack? If we sold it, could we lease another truck? I don't know the question to that, but Dustin gave me a couple of magazines to look at. One is Truck Paper, and it has pricing for used vehicles. So I'll look at this and I can type in our truck and get a more specific estimate for that. But based on what we looked at prior to the meeting, that Mack truck probably fetch, what would you say, Dustin, $60,000-$70,000? 80,000.
As it gets older, it's gonna be less valuable. We just be able to turn it into a thing is if we make sold it, got top up. Then we're out of the truck. And we fix it off for
True. And we can certainly consider that, because we can take the money from the sale of the Mack if we decide to sell it and flip that into a lease without increasing the budget. We did.
Was there a stipulation?
Yes. I didn't think about that as Bruce was talking about that, but I can look in the grant because it's only for a certain period of time. And that period of time may be 5 years. And then after that, it might be prorated. Usually it depends on the estimated life of the piece of equipment. So I can look into that and see, because that potentially could squash that, yeah. But we, I believe the grant was for about $50,000, which at the time, and if we were to do that again, would make buying the truck certainly more affordable. But, we saw a 2025 Mack, almost identical to what we have, but newer, with 19,000 miles, and they want over 125,000 for it. Buying a truck at this point, I don't think makes any sense. And I think long-term leases are going to be to our benefit, because I don't see monthly lease rates going down over time. If this was a couple of years ago, I might say, yeah, they might go down, but I think some of those prices have come down now, and I think this might be a good time to lock into a longer term lease. Well, one of the proposals is for 3 years with an option to renew for an additional 4. So that'd be a 7-year lease. And at the end of the first 3 years, the lease payment actually goes down $65 a month. The lease does have an inflation adjustment clause, so that if the CPI increases by more than 0.5%, they can come back at 2 periods, January and July of each year, to ask for adjustments. And that doesn't sound unreasonable, especially in a long-term lease. There's got to be a little bit of adjustment there for inflation.
I'm having fun over here, just looking at very rough numbers. I like rough numbers sometimes. I look at the bottom line of about $1 million. I'm looking at the income. About $600,000 of that comes from the surcharge. About $100,000 comes from grants. $100,000 comes from having the towns paying it, and $200,000 comes from the things we sell. So in other words, only about 1/5 of them are 1/5 of our costs are actually coming from what we sell. And it's just a concept I never had before. So I started looking at it. How much of our cost of operation actually comes from what we
You know,
Most people don't understand that, because I know I did.
I think, and Bruce, let me interject, and then if you want to add something to it, there's always been a myth that recycling generates revenue. And there is revenue to be gained there. Does it cover the cost of collection and transportation and processing? No. Has it ever? No. And so those are myths that I think people say, well, you make money on your recycling. We don't make money. It helps us to offset some of our costs. You know, but it does allow us to take things like Freon and not charge people. It also allows us to keep our tire prices low. It allows us to have a household hazardous waste program whereby we don't have to charge people. Because if we were to charge for a lot of those things, they'd end up along the side of the road. I think Bruce was first.
Whenever I come up with this idea in town to make money, always remind me of municipalities, businesses. Not a whole base of money to provide service.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing is, you know, years ago when these systems were being set up, there was hope that, you know, recycling would cover more of its costs. And then the private sector, you know, took the things that could be done well by the private sector and ran with them. The public sector always gets left with what nobody else wants to do. That's just the nature of how it works. And so for people to think, oh, you should be making money, like Bruce said, that's not, because we're picking up the pieces. We're providing the services that the private sector doesn't want to provide because they can't do it and make money. And so that's where we come in. That's where, and you know, should we be having a keen eye to doing things as efficiently as possible? Absolutely. But, you know, after a point where we're dumping, you know, $75,000 into repairing, you know, 2 or 3 trucks annually, we have to make a change. And so, you know, some things are converging to the 2025 budget that make it seem like it's really going up a lot. I'm hopeful that this type of increase will not occur in 2026. I can sit here, you know, and you can say, well, Paul, that's all great because you're leaving. But I want to leave the organization in a position where, you know, the next person who fills this seat isn't coming to you and saying, you know what, Paul didn't increase the budget enough. I need 20% this year. So there are some things that I think we need to raise in the 2025 budget to position the organization so that we don't get hit a year or two down the line.
First of all,
Did you hear that on the computer?
No, no,
Okay,
we did
so
not.
Dustin's point is that we're providing services so that our towns are compliant with state law. And towns have a couple choices. They can either do it on their own or they can join an organization like ours to hopefully, you know, keep the cost down and make it more reasonable for everyone.
Right.
do it for less.
So he followed that up with saying that we're still pursuing our mission statement And if anyone thinks they can do it for less, come on down. And well, I guess too that, this would be an opportunity if there's someone out there, who wants to lead the organization. We're going to be looking for, people to do that. And, maybe there are opportunities to cut some costs here or there. And having a fresh set of eyes, I think, will be beneficial for the organization going forward. But I just, I feel like this point in time, we need to make some of these steps so as not to really hit the towns hard with, a $5 a ton surcharge increase or worse. I would like to make a comment about the surcharge rate. I asked my colleagues in other waste districts what their surcharge rates were, and there are about 7 districts that have surcharges, and we're literally right in the middle. Three have higher surcharges, and 3 have lower surcharges. So, and we've been kind of in that middle area for years now.
But the ones that are lower, such as like Lamoille, have a pay service, so they pay a lot more money to get rid of their garbage and their recycling. So there's more direct costs. Right, and they have more per capita. Stowe pays a lot. I mean, it's a different scenario. I mean, at the end of the day, yeah, municipality should be run. Yes, a municipality isn't a business, but it really is. And all our job is, and like any business, is to just run it with a net neutral, maybe a little bit net positive, but you want a balanced budget for the most part, right? So we're not in it to make money per se, but we're in it because not only we don't need to make money, but it's saving the taxpayers money. So people that use the facilities on average save about $700 to $1,000 a year. So if you go to a full service transfer that we have in our district, get rid of your recycling for free, pay $3, $4 a bag for your trash, that's what you're directly saving just by using the facility. Then your town saving about, I think Barton spends about $36,000 a year, or $36,000 every 3, whatever, to do their SWIP. So they pay Casella to come in and do their SWIP. So that's a direct cost for that town. And they have to pay for household hazardous waste days. They have to pay for their transfer station. So it's all a cost. So there's a lot of other direct savings, I think, Paul, right? You'd agree that we provide taxpayers themselves, not just towns, but taxpayers in every town, get a direct saving.
Well, that's why we made a decision years ago not to try and nickel and dime folks by charging for Freon and some other things, because we wanted to make sure that those things were kept out of the environment and that people weren't getting stuck with fees at every turn. So, the surcharge is the primary source of revenue. Yes, we do have hauling fees, but again, to charge $55 for every time we go pick up recycling at a facility is still a really good deal for folks. And schools, it'll still be under $40 a stop, to do that. We are hoping to put our food scrap contract out to bid this fall. That price has been pretty stable for several years. But right now, I can't tell you, if the per toter cost is going to go up or down. I doubt it would go down. But we should be able to put that out to bid here in October and have, bids that we can evaluate by the December meeting, and then, award something in December for beginning January 1st.
Does anybody on Zoom have any other questions on the budget? Proposed budget? Dustin?
Yeah, commodities, but they're all, they tell you how much they're gonna pay you for it.
Yeah, so Dustin pointed out that, we're kind of at the mercy of the markets when we sell our material, and that makes it hard to budget from one year to the next. A town has a grand list. And yes, there are adjustments made, once you get out of 20% of the common level of appraisal. We don't have that in our business. One year we could be getting $150 a ton for cardboard, and then maybe the next month it drops down to 40. And we have no way of anticipating that or planning for that. So that makes it difficult. In some years we have taken in close to $200,000 in the sale of recyclables alone. That's been a while since we've been able to do that. And again, it's just, what the markets provide to us.
The volume of recyclables we are bringing in changing over the years? Are we getting more than we used to, less? What's happening to our volume?
Well, every year we produce an annual report that has a pie chart that shows the tonnage. It has been going down a little bit each year. Sometimes there are spikes in that. Sometimes there are shifts between materials. Historically, half of what we've shipped has typically been paper, whether it was cardboard or mixed paper. We've seen large increases in plastic over the last several years, but I think we've also seen more recycling done by the private sector in the form of single stream. So yes, we're seeing a little bit less material, but that doesn't mean that people are recycling less. It just means that it's being captured differently by the private sector.
Water pumps change dramatically.
Right.
Value of one and getting a greater profit.
Well, we did that years ago. We separated our plastic into natural and versus PET, like number 1 versus number 2. The problem with that is once you mix stuff, it's very difficult to train people to separate them again. And storage is an issue for us. We would have to have another means or space available to ship an entire tractor trailer load of that one particular material, whether it was office paper, because we used to separate office paper from newspaper. The volume of newspaper has dropped so dramatically in the last several years that most of our paper now is junk mail. And we still get a fair amount of magazines, but the amount of newspaper in there has dropped. Boxboard represents such a small fraction of the corrugated that it really wouldn't make a difference. There are some organizations that do put their boxboard in the paper, but what that does is it drives the value of the mixed paper down. Our mixed paper, for a couple of reasons. One, we don't put boxboard in it, and 2, it's dry. And so it's more desirable typically than, let's say, what you might receive in a curbside program, because no matter, if it's dry for a couple days, you always get wet paper from a curbside program. If you have lids, the lids get flipped open or whatever.
Paper's contaminated.
Yeah, we've been fortunate at times to find vendors that take our material because it is so clean and well sealed. And hopefully we can do that. But yeah, trying to we used to separate our glass into 3 different colors. We got I think, revenue for, green. But clear and amber didn't do anything. And then the next thing you know, there's blue glass. And then, you know, you find other types, and so it just made sense to mix it all. That's a good point. I don't think we're there yet. I think the bigger concern is if we raise the surcharge, you know, dramatically, we'll force people to recycle more. And that's the goal. The problem with that is we're not making the kind of money on the sale of recycling to offset the increase in surcharge revenue. So we're kind of, it's kind of analogous to like the tobacco money. You know, there's a tax on tobacco and people say, why don't we ban tobacco? Because we're addicted to the revenue from the tax on tobacco. And that's kind of what we're stuck with as a waste district. If we had an alternative source of revenue, like let's just say maybe some sort of recyclable increase dramatically in volume, in price, we could make that shift and we could force. The reason the state went to mandatory pay as you throw was to encourage people to recycle more and throw away less. Unfortunately, there were a number of things that occurred when that law was passed that you can't determine how successful pay as you throw was in reducing trash volume. So we don't know, you know, I'd like to think that paying by the bag increases people's awareness. And if they want to save money, they're going to recycle more. I think that's happened. A number of people have made that connection, and that's how it works. There's a whole host of other people out there who could care less. And no matter how expensive a bag of trash becomes and how inexpensive recycling becomes, they're just not going to do it. And, you know, but you're right. At some point, the increase in trash costs could drive people to throw it over the bank. However, the surcharge at around $25 a ton adds about 35 to 37 cents a bag onto the cost of the bag of trash. So it's the other costs, the hauling, the landfill disposal fee, the insurance associated with the hauling, you know, the repairs to the trucks, all that, the gas. That's what's driving the cost of trash disposal up, not our surcharge.
What it does is it has an effect, obviously, like anything else does. But ultimately, what it's going to do is take more volume away from the haulers and force them to go to the facility to spend less money. So if people want to save money, there's an option. If they want it picked up at their house, then they're going to have to pony up and pay, because like Paul said, it is. Everything's a direct cost. Yes, that's part of it. The surcharge is part of it, but it's everything, right? So, but there's still that option. Most of our facilities, most people can buy Irisburg goes to Albany because we have trash, vice versa. That, you know, the backdrop here in Lindenville. So there's going to be options. So yeah, it would increase at the curb, but they still have a, you know, before they throw it over the bank somewhere, they're just going to bring it to Lindenville and spend $4 a bag, $7 a month on pickup service. So hopefully, I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, hopefully that's what's going to happen.
It does. There are lower cost options
right
available to people. And most of it means doing the work, more of the work yourself, like taking it to a facility. Whereas, you know, having someone come to your house and pick up your trash is a premium service in the Northeast Kingdom. And I don't know if people realize that or not, but, you know, you can dispose of trash relatively inexpensively if you take your trash to a facility compared to having someone pick it up at your house.
Let's over at the
valuable thing in that building is the are we starting?
Yeah.
So if we can go in all of our places, thinking full staff running that machine at full, we could make more money just on the call tax.
Correct.
Yeah.
Um,
There's another revenue there. I mean, it could actually generate. Just thinking how many hours that machine is designed to run, so many hours, and if you were running it pretty close to.
Yeah, there is an opportunity there. Aluminum's another one, but because most of the aluminum's handled through the bottle bill, we just don't get as much. And that's part of the reason why it's so valuable is because, you know, it's scarce.
That's why all the soup cans are tin, not aluminum.
Right.
I'm not even worried.
Did you ever, in that process of that, out of a truck, some people do not care. Sir, make any difference if $5 more or $10 for saying 90% of it for
Anybody on Zoom have any other questions like to bring up?
Oh, I'm just listening.
Hi, Steve. I mean, does anybody feel comfortable to make a motion? Do you want more discussion? Do we want to wait? Do you want to wait and follow? Are you pretty
Well,
confident on some of the numbers? I mean,
I'm pretty confident on the numbers given the data that I have today. I do expect to have better numbers on who's going to take health insurance next year, and also have another month's worth of the surcharge come in so that I know what that total amount is. And maybe we can drop that down, you know, a dime or a quarter, you know, I don't know. The other thing to remember too is if at any point during the year the board says, hey, you know, we're raking it in, they can decide to lower the surcharge by any amount they want to. We've never done that mid-year, but it is an option. You know, the budget is fixed, but if, you know, this sounds odd to say, if we're making more money than we need, we could lower the surcharge. It's unlikely to occur, but, you know, if I have one more month, I'll have a little bit more data to say, now I feel more confident about the surcharge figure.
well, if anything, it's going to go down, not up.
Correct, unless
So-
there's some cost that I haven't stumbled across, which, you know, also gives me another month to go over.
And
Paul, when you sell aluminum something, we know we're getting the money we should be getting. On the surcharge, how do we know that we're getting the amount of money we should be getting?
We have a third-party auditor that randomly, you know, well, it's not quite random, but they'll contact me and say, okay, you have 25 haulers registered. How many would you like to audit this year? And then I give them 5 or 6 names. Not everybody gets audited every year, but everybody knows who does because they talk. And so that keeps the ones who don't get audited honest, because the threat of an audit, they know it's out there.
My town, if we go by some of the homes in my town, then we'll go over to another district town and keep on collecting, and then they take some.
Yeah, and we do have formulas that they can use to estimate, you know, how much of that is Lamoille, how much of that is Northeast Kingdom, how much of that is Central Vermont. So we have worked that out with most of the haulers.
That's how we do ours. We break it down by district, by town. Pretty easy. Put it in there and then pay everybody.
Is it a perfect system? No, but you know, it's the best,
It's as close as
I
you're gonna
think,
get.
yeah.
Because most of us pick up, most haulers pick up trash in multiple towns, and a lot of the towns, like, particularly we pick up their non-district towns. So we factor those in too. So again, it's not perfect, but it's better than it could be. If you want to just wait
Yeah,
and we can pass this in November?
that guess would be my preference.
Everybody on Zoom, did you guys hear that? Paul's preference would be to wait. We can wait, pass it in November, maybe have a chance to gain some questions if anybody has any.
Yep, agree.
Yeah, and maybe what we can do too is schedule one of the public hearings prior to the next meeting or as part of the next meeting so that, you know, we can get any kind of public feedback. And then typically what we do is we have another public hearing prior to the December meeting. And that would satisfy our 2 public hearing requirements.
Well, because it's listed, this meeting that a vote is required, should we make a vote, make a motion to not have a vote on this?
So
Table of yes.
I don't know what the ramifications are, but if the board wishes to do that.
the only reason why vote required is on any line item is because if it does get moved to a vote, then it's not, we don't have to vote because it says vote required because we're not actually voting. Basically, we can just add it right the next month's agenda. It's on there because if it's not on there, then we can't vote on it. But if it's on there, then we can. So at least move on the budget.
We can't hear you.
Nick is
I was
just
just-
explaining that if the line item on the agenda says vote required, you don't have to vote on it. But if you
Okay.
don't say vote required, you can't vote on it.
Okay,
There is no requirement to table that. We would just add it to next month's agenda.
great. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions in here on the? Steve? I
So,
think that's what we're gonna do.
like right before we convene for our meeting, have a public hearing, because that's typically what we've done. I can do it on a separate night. Okay. I mean, it makes sense.
Why not?
Yeah,
Get it all done in one shot. That way you gotta have another night. You gotta sit and
right.
wait. Nothing else on that. Article 8, is any updates? Say financial, I think we pretty much got that wrapped up. Programs, obviously got the executive director served. Probably haven't had much time to do anything with it.
Well, I have reached out to the league, and I will have more time in October to pursue that. So, you know, I will have hopefully more of a substantial update at the next meeting regarding that. I did want to mention the comment I made about collection of various materials from district facilities. Most weeks, we ask the facilities to turn in a list of what they have at their facility so that we know before we go there what we're picking up. And there are things like foam, e-waste, used oil. These are the things that come to mind. There may be other things from time to time, but these are the ones that sometimes we have the most difficult time storing at our facility. E-waste, for whatever reason, has been very problematic this year. Sometimes it's us not loading the trailer. Sometimes it's the company not picking the trailer up. So if we leave something at your facility, chances are it's because we don't have room for it here in Lindenville. We would ask that in the following week that you continue to put those items on your list so that we're constantly reminded, oh, we haven't picked up foam or e-waste or used oil in the last month from such and such a town. Typically what we've been doing with the e-waste is if you have more than one box, we'll try to get at least one of the boxes out of there so that you have more room to accommodate, you know, additional e-waste. If you only have one box for e-waste, it might stay there, but we typically know where those places are, and we try and get those out of there so that you know, have the additional space. I just wanted to bring that up because, and I feel like this hasn't been as much of a problem in the past, but for some reason this year, it seems to be more of a problem. And maybe it's complicated more because of all the truck issues that we've had, some of the problems with the skid steer and the baler. You know, it's been a tough year for equipment repairs. But I just wanted to bring that up, that we're not ignoring the towns. We just sometimes don't have the capacity to store everything at our facility. Not all the towns. Right now, I think we're picking up foam in about 10 locations. I'd love to add it to more towns, but until we figure out how we can get it processed, for those of you who saw the demonstration, you know, we have a mezzanine level full of foam right now, and we processed foam today. So we're still working to get through that backlog and come up with a more of a routine to process it so that it doesn't, it's one of the things that when all said and done, it's the first thing that we don't do. You know, if we have to do other, you know, X, Y, and Z, that becomes W, and we ignore it. And we need to figure out how to include it into what it is that we do on a regular basis.
Actually, a good question that I didn't have an answer to. I was going to ask you and I forgot until just barely. But the Brian actually asked me about compost. If compost would actually surcharge, well, I don't.
Compost is not subject to the surcharge.
It's not.
No.
Okay. I knew recycling wasn't, but I didn't know about it.
Anything that goes to the landfill, and that includes materials used for road base in the landfill or daily cover, are subject to the surcharge. That's not the case in all districts. Some districts allow road base and daily cover to be exempt from their surcharge, but we don't.
Now, was there any district that was actually creating a tax on the compost?
I haven't heard. I have a district managers meeting Thursday, and I can ask. But
Actually, the only
I
reason
haven't heard of that.
I even bring it up is when he asked me, it made sense because that was a majority of the weight that was in trash. And now that it's out and the cost of compost is going up, I was like, well, I don't know, because I don't even, to be honest, I can't even tell you what we pay for it right now. So I wasn't sure, but I thought it was a good question. I was like, oh, I got to find out.
It is a good question. I do know that some districts have rates for C&D that are different from other materials, but yeah, as far as I know, compost is not subject to the surcharge.
Speaking of recycling, we've been told the sellers not charging our people to have a mattress, $50 or something, that they're having to recycle it. They cannot put it in the landfill. Is that true? Do we need to know about mattresses being recycled now? What's going on? Anybody know?
It's kind of true.
Yeah, well, they're not necessarily recycling them. They can be recycled, but they are expensive. Casella doesn't want them in the landfill because they get bound up in the equipment that processes the material. It's very easy for Joe Public to dismantle their mattress and box spring in a half an hour with a claw hammer and a sheetrock knife. And you can put all the foam in 2 bags, and you have clean wood, the strapping, and a metal frame. Metal frame could be recycled. The strapping could be used for kindling wood or whatever. I know this because I've done it myself on more than one occasion. Most people probably won't go through the effort, but when they have to pay $50 for a mattress, they may want to consider doing it. Yeah, it's not as daunting, and if you do it, you're going to get mad because of how much you paid for the mattress and realize how little material actually goes into a mattress.
How about an all foam mattress?
Yeah. Well, yeah, you could cut it up and bag it. I don't know if the foam gets wound up in the processing equipment.
It wouldn't, but it just never.
It's the metal.
It never goes anywhere though, too. Part of a landfill, being that I work in both, is all stuff that breaks down. Decomposes, that probably never, because it's made. Right, and that's just the unfortunate circumstance of being in a disposable world that we live in, right? Everything that we buy on a daily basis is nothing but junk. So when we have that kind of stuff, there's only a few people that will even recycle it. Sleepwell, I think, is one of the few in Vermont that even do it. And they are so overwhelmed, it ain't even funny. So,
And it's not cheap.
No.
But at least it'll get recycled.
Right.
But again, you can dismantle them on your own with 2 tools and in a relatively short period of time.
And I'm pretty sure the foam ones they shred and send it. I think it goes to Massachusetts, I believe. So, and I know that's where Casella sends theirs. It's where we send our, like, we just take and put them in a trailer and then send them down. Either Mass or Connecticut. Is it Connecticut? Yeah, somewhere down there. Yeah. And again, it's super expensive. It's a pain in the ass, to be honest, but better than the alternative, I guess. Well, they're not banning it. That's why they're charging so much. And that's just going to go up. They're trying to charge too much to where people don't bring it.
Or they burn.
One other question following all the news and the TVs about Exxon claiming they can recycle plastic, but if they don't, and Shell or somebody was saying it's out of that business because it doesn't work. What can we say to our customers who come in and say, hey, I saw this in the news, that plastic really isn't being recycled? What can we say to them that is not true with us?
I can speak on that a little bit. Well, currently, I see that recycling quantities, the value is increasing. So that point factor is for those recycling commodities. Like we talked about natural polymers decreasing here. Drugs, those are worth about 50 cents ordinary, and just like the market creates. So certainly, more case we can see fluctuations over time, but right now there's being spent by manufacturers on recycled goods. Yeah, recycled commodities added. I mean, that being said, people need to recognize that we do not accept all plastics in this plastics that we have do become trash because we're not. I'm not going to recycle my phone. I would recycle, hoping that you try to put it in there, hopefully, you know, into the technology. But so much of what we experience is not recyclable, not market for it. But the materials we do have markets for, like the ones that we collect through programs, do have markets domestically in the United States, in Canada, and that material does have value. And yeah, so when people say, you know, why are we saying, why hear on the news that plastic isn't recyclable? Unfortunately, but the product packaging that can be mechanical, like plastic, is happening, and that is plastic. Number one, number two. Number five is growing in strength. It's still not as strong. And obviously, we heard a little bit about it. So it can be separate market. I have the majority of that does end up being tracked. And so I would say it's something like a gas and that's a portion of it, but natural news and other types were happening.
They won't even tell it what's happening worldwide, right? Like plastic's the number one polluter in the world, number one. And it's just because it's so grossly overused, right? So when you get your blacks, your blues, your greens, some of your 7, 6s, all that's junk. That's the end of the line. It can't be recycled anymore. Basically, there's some countries that burn it because it's worth more as petroleum than it is anything else. So you can actually do a renewable energy and burn the plastic. It actually has hardly any emissions. They did a tire burn like on the road that put out less emissions than a wood plant, but because of the theory of people just can't wrap their heads around burning rubber. Well, guess what? 66%, 67% petroleum based. They did a test burn. It was cleaner than wood, but yet people still didn't like the idea. Plastic's the same way. So what ends up with it worldwide? It gets discarded everywhere else. It's, whatever. Washes up on shores worldwide places and other places. It gets put into a landfill. Only so much you can do, but a lot of it's perception. I mean, sorry, but there's too many minutes that just don't understand. Instead of being in the ocean, yeah, we could take that out and it could get burned and get renewed for home, but nobody wants to do it. It sounds like it's a bad thing. In reality, it's not. Tires are number one for that's a renewable. As many tires as we have on all of our cars and everything else, we could be chipping those and burning them for energy instead of wood and trees. Like we're always making tires. Right. I mean, it's just the water separators, the technology that's out there now, it's not a big deal. But again, it needs to get past the perception of people thinking that it's terrible.
And
either way we look at it, it's going to be terrible.
I would also add to that, if you're disgusted with what, how much plastic there is,
don't buy it.
Don't buy it.
Don't buy it.
That's how us as consumers have the ability to affect the market.
And I will tell you, that's why I use Dr. Squatch. I'm not a spokesperson. I get it in a cardboard box. It's bar soap, and I use it. And guess what? I reduce my recycling by a lot. No more plastic, except for my milk, and that's actually worse. But no, I'm serious. I mean, it's just it's like Paul said though. It's having knowledge and looking at something and going, am I just another asshole, for lack of a better term, that's just going to sit here and buy stuff without realizing where it's going to go afterwards? Or am I going to try to look for something that's a good product that doesn't have as much trash?
Have you ever gone to Walmart with your grandkids? Yeah, that's the struggle that everybody faces. I want this, I want that. No one thinks that, if Vermont wanted to be truly progressive, they would put a sign on every retail store that says, think about what you're going to do with this before you buy it.
Right. On
every door. And that might get people thinking, but they have to read too. So.
waste management, putting out a little paper that we could hand to our patrons and recycling. Hey, here's a different option to this, this, and this. So that, like, hey, getting, not buying the big jug of laundry detergent, right? Like half the laundry detergent. Like, hey, do this instead of this. Instead of buying this, buy this.
And we do that to a certain extent, especially around the holidays. We try and promote waste reduction. It's the hardest one to promote. But we do put forward some effort. The thing we struggle with, Bruce, is do we want to produce paper that gets handed out that then, so we do struggle with those things, but we do need to get that message out.
But not only that,
Remember to recycle.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
but again, though, it's education, and it doesn't necessarily need to be paper, but it's more about, just going to a school, going to the schools and start education and say, hey, you know what, instead of having your parents go out and buy $30 worth of wrapping paper that's garbage, pick the newspaper and wrap it like we used to when we were younger, and wrap your gifts up in newspaper. Then when you're done, you can recycle it. I mean, it's stupid. Yeah, a lot of people aren't going to do it, but still, I can remember when we were a kid. I mean, I'm 43, and I can remember doing that stuff, just because you didn't have to buy wrapping paper. Yeah, I mean, but again, it's if anything, letting them know that there's alternatives. That's a whole nother discussion that could last hours. But, yeah, about two. One of my gifts was, go split that firewood. Got a brand new mall. Oh,
I have
any other updates?
no other updates or other business.
Anybody on Zoom have any updates? Anything they need to? Hearing none, I'd take a motion to adjourn. Second. Well, it's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? There never is. All those in favor of tonight's adjournment, say aye.
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 Never any opposed, is there? No.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Good night.
guys.
Good night.
Good ride home.
Okay,
Yeah, good night, everybody.
good night.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
It is. They did a test burn about 15 years ago at Ticonderoga when it shut down, and it's actually